In this video, we're going to cover fundamentals of accident investigations. The main topics we're going to hit are going to be incident response in a very limited way, evidence collection and preservation, the roots of causality, and report writing and documentation. So what do we think of when we think of an investigation? A lot of our minds probably go to TV shows that we've seen, like the old Dragnet show, Law and Order series, stuff like that, where there is an event. The people that are looking into that event don't fully have an understanding of what's going on, like say a theft, something like that. They don't know who did it, and they're trying to find out who did it, how they did it, why they did it, and how to catch them. In the news, you'll see the aftermath of investigations. Say a plane crash, the FAA and the NTSB will look into that, and you will see the results of that in the real world. So far, what you might be thinking is that the point of an investigation is to find out who's at fault. And what I'm going to challenge you to do here in this video is think beyond that and try to avoid the assignment of blame and look more towards causality. The goal in safety is a zero accident rate, meaning there's never an incident, there's never an injury. Everybody goes home the same way that they came in, every single day, no matter what, every single time. That's the ideal. In the real world, that's a bit unobtainable, but that's certainly what safety is striving to reach, is a zero accident zone. So what investigations into safety incidents should strive for is not necessarily assigning blame, but finding that causality, to find that linchpin that started the events that led to the accident, the injury, the illness in the first place. Fixing that issue will be the thing that moves you towards that goal of zero accidents. This video is going to break down investigations into 4 basic steps. While they're going to be sequential in this video, a lot of the times these things have a tendency to happen at the same time, all simultaneously. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Incident response. The occurrence of an accident rarely gives any time to really prepare, but incident response and preparedness is key to an effective investigation. Having a well-designed plan, trained and drilled response staff, and a culture of open reporting of accidents and incidents is one of the most important steps to effectively investigate incidents. That starts well before incidents even occur. So we're going to go over some very basic principles of incident response, but we will not be covering that topic in a lot of detail here. Effective incident response is a whole nother topic unto itself. For the purpose of incident investigations, though, it is important to know a little bit about some of the human factors that are present during and immediately following an incident event. In any incident, there is some degree of panic for those involved and responding. An incident is an unusual and generally negative event, and it's human nature to do what I've found to be one of generally 3 things if you're not a regular responder to incidents. So if you're not a trained EMT, fire, emergency responder, that kind of thing, there are generally 3 types of behaviors that I've seen in lay people. First, there are the people that try to intervene. They may not know how to intervene, and they may not know what is appropriate or effective, but they're the ones that are the doers, the ones that see something and want to act upon it and very much affect its outcome. The second is the type of people that try to escape the situation, that immediately just run away from traumatizing or a difficult situation. And then the third type is the people that just freeze. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to react. And they either figuratively or literally freeze in place. As an investigator, you have to understand that each of these responses is absolutely valid and that no one really knows where they are on the spectrum until they're faced with the real thing. But understand that these factors can affect the investigation process a great deal. Think about how you might react if after a traumatizing event, an incident where you either were injured yourself or had an accident yourself or witnessed somebody that you've worked with for years become injured or have an incident. Think about how you might react if immediately following that incident or during the incident itself, some investigator walked up and began badgering you about the specifics of the incident and who's at fault and why did you do that, and your approach very much will determine the quality of the information that you get, especially during the incident itself and during the response period. Ideally, incident investigators should not be part of the actual incident response. That's certainly not the way things go in the real world, and in many cases, the incident investigator is also the person that is charged with the response to that incident. As we get into the real substance of this video, it is important to understand that there are a lot of dual roles that people play. Manager, incident responder, investigator, a lot of those things are the same person or the same individual. But understanding how you're interacting with the people involved at the scene of the incident is exceptionally important towards a good, honest, and effective incident investigation. Evidence collection and preservation. Effectively, this begins prior to the incident itself in a lot of cases. Things like machine settings, CCTV footage, logbooks, vehicle speeds, and other objective forms of information can be available and collected that shed light onto what led to the incident. For any investigator, knowing the basics of retention periods in particular is key to making sure that data that is available doesn't get lost. This is, again, something that is a lot of prep work. It's a lot of understanding your organization, understanding what's available in your organization, what kind of information is tracked, what isn't tracked. This will help formulate a lot of the remainder of your evidence collection, your questioning of witnesses, and quality of the information that you're going to get moving forward. From here, we're going to break down evidence collection, documentation, and preservation into two specific sections. At the scene. During the incident response and recovery period, there's not a lot of emphasis placed on the preservation of evidence, and nor should there be for the responders that are trying to deal with that incident. The immediate concerns are human safety, scene safety, and recovery, getting back to normal. But that period can destroy a lot of very relevant information. So we talked about things like CCTV footage already and other empirical forms of data. Don't rely on those forms of data to paint an appropriate picture of the scene itself. This is where a separation between the investigator and the responders can really come in handy. But even if that's not possible, training your responders to recognize and record, at least mentally, things like, was the weather involved? What was the weather like? Was there a specific odor in the area? That's especially important when you're talking about chemical spills and chemical related incidents. What about the physical scene itself is important? That's the things you're looking for at the scene and the types of evidence that will vanish very, very quickly. All the old movies where they put the chalk outline around the murder victim, that is an effort to preserve things that cannot be preserved indefinitely. While nothing hopefully will ever be quite that severe, that's the kind of thing you want to do with every note you take about an incident, every photograph you take about an incident, is describe that scene as if the person reading it will have never been there, will never go there, and doesn't have any understanding of the incident. You're trying to really paint a picture, and the information you gather at the scene will help you build that picture in the report that you end up writing. A few items of note with regard to technology that exists that allows for some extrapolation of information about the scene. Historic weather information is readily available online, but that information, remember, is based on a generalized area. Those generalized areas, as time goes on and as technology moves forward, are getting ever smaller, but it does not necessarily speak to the conditions at the incident scene. CCTV footage is another tool that is great in the investigatory process, but that shouldn't necessarily be relied upon to show fine detail. You can never really know what the camera caught at the event, whether it's going to be obstructed, if there will be some kind of an issue with the recording itself, what the resolution is on the cameras as to whether or not it's going to catch fine detail. So don't rely on CCTV footage to fill in blanks that you really need to be looking at the scene as it sat when you were there. Additionally, the recovery process for every incident should be documented as well. That's going to come into play in the final report, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that section of this video. After the scene. Following the incident and the collection of evidence at the scene, making sense or starting to make sense of what has been collected to this point should begin immediately. This will help preserve mental details in both the investigator and the witnesses and the people involved in that incident, and provide time for some follow-up before potentially the recovery process itself erases that information. But it is at this point that a deeper dive into the things not only that have already been collected, but things like organizational policies, training records, accepted behaviors versus trained behaviors, oversight and management of things related to the incident, equipment maintenance records, safety concern reports, near miss reports. These are the types of things that you can gather during this part of the investigation that really will flush out your causality as you begin the next section of this video. Roots of causality. All of the collected information, evidence, photographs, CCTV video, eyewitness testimony is in service to finding the cause of the accidents. Notice that I say cause and not causes. Often, investigators can rush to judgment and list a whole host of causes that seem accurate and viable. As an example, if a person falls down a set of steps in a parking lot, the causes could certainly be the stairs are ice covered, the person was wearing flat-bottom shoes, the railing was broken, and it was dark in that portion of the parking lot at the time. But these are symptoms of the actual cause or the root cause. CollinsDictionary.com defines root cause as the fundamental reason for the occurrence of a problem. In accident investigations, this is the actionable result of the investigative process if the goal is to reduce or eliminate the potential for a similar accident to happen again. Remember, the goal for health and safety professionals is that 0% accident rate. There are many tools that help investigators find a root cause. One of the most effective and often cited is the 5 Why method. This video won't go into the origins of the method, and it does have broad usage across many other disciplines. In fact, it came from the auto industry. That's my only little bit of history that I'll give on it, just to not make this video 3 hours long. But it's highly effective for health and safety professionals in getting to what actually caused accidents and helps create very effective corrective actions in the final report. Let's take the established example of the person falling down the steps. The initial answers to the question why remain the same at the surface. The stairs were ice covered, the person was wearing flat-bottom shoes, the railing was broken, and it was dark in that portion of the parking lot at the time. But for each of these answers to the question why at the surface level, there is a second why that can be asked. The stairs were ice covered. Why? Because staff had not yet applied ice melt after a storm. The person was wearing flat-bottom shoes. Why? There was a VIP event that day and the individual was wearing dress shoes. The railing was broken. Why? The railing was snapped at a rusted out weld. It was dark in that portion of the lot at the time. Why? Parking lot timers had not yet been reset for daylight savings time. Some of the answers to this level result in dead ends. For instance, why was the individual in dress shoes? Very simple, because of the presentation that morning. Others generate further why questions that need answers, and some may even begin to converge on a single answer that encompasses more than one question. The stairs were ice covered. Why? Because staff had not yet applied ice melt. Why? 3 of the 10 maintenance positions in this particular location are unfilled. The railing was broken. Why? The weld had rusted and snapped. Why? 3 out of the 10 maintenance positions are not yet filled. The parking lot lights had not yet been reset. Why? 3 of the 10 maintenance positions are not yet filled. In this simple example, you can see how the answers to the questions why, as we move down the levels of questioning, are starting to converge on one single answer that may be our root cause. It can be fairly easy to stop right here now that we've had multiple answered why questions that end up pointing to the same cause. But we're going to go a step further and find the root cause. Why was the lack of 3 positions out of 10 in maintenance not being filled lead to these conditions? The 7 remaining staff were forced to cover the workload of 10, and priorities had to be placed on projects and issues based on need. So what is our root cause? A shortage of workers in maintenance led to the conditions that ultimately resulted in the employee falling down the stairs that morning. There are certainly other why questions that we can continue to answer based on this result, but for the purposes of a root cause analysis and the investigative process and the report that's going to be generated from this and the action items that are going to come out of this, this is right where we want to be for our root cause. Now consider your 5 whys might end up being 2, might be 1, might be 10, might be 15. It really depends on the complexity of the incident and the type of information that you have and the circumstances surrounding it. So the 5 whys is really a title, so don't get caught too much up in that verbiage. But the process is meant to ensure that the investigative process and the investigator is looking as deep as is appropriate and necessary to really find the point where the problem started that caused that incident. Without that determination, you're putting band-aids on symptoms of an underlying problem that has not yet been identified and cannot be solved. And if we don't identify that problem, there's no way to prescribe solutions to ensure that a similar incident or that the issue doesn't crop up again in the future. And that is the whole purpose in investigating incidents in such a regimented fashion. Reporting and documentation. Investigation, evidence gathering, determining the root cause, none of this is of any real value without adequate reporting. Effectively communicating the results of all of this is paramount towards the, again, goal of a 0 accident rate and towards prescribing and following up with any corrective actions that might be appropriate given the incident. There are many templates available online. Insurance companies and underwriters generally have their own formats that they want to see reports. For the United States in particular, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration also provides templates that can be very useful in ensuring accurate and compliant reporting to the Department of Labor and is a good place to start. Aside from that, reporting should at least include basic information like the time and date of the occurrence, the time and date of the report, those directly and indirectly involved, the location, a narrative of the occurrence itself and its circumstances, a cataloging of the information and evidence collected along with where it is being preserved and the methods used for collection, the root cause and supporting information leading to that determination, the direct and indirect costs of the incident, including sustained injuries, property damage, impact on productivity or similar regulatory exposure, etc. And most important, corrective actions. Corrective actions from the standpoint of risk control and hazard mitigation are the linchpin of effective incident investigations. An effective incident report should document the answer to this one simple question. What do we do to keep this or something similar from happening again? Clear, actionable, and reasonable corrective measures not only create a path toward the goal of a 0% accident rate, but also demonstrates the organization's commitment to that ideal upon their implementation. So here we are, a completed investigation. What do we do with it now? Follow-up. Without appropriate follow-up following an incident investigation, corrective measures, there really isn't much of a point to doing it in the first place. Safety is a continuous process of improvement, and the results of incident investigations should be taken as an opportunity to improve. Incidents are events that no one ever goes out expecting. And accident prevention and hazard detection are entirely different topics altogether. But when incidents occur, the best thing for any individual or organization to do is objectively look within and determine what can be done better moving forward. To return to a point that I made earlier in the video, you'll note that at no point did the process look to assign individual or individuals blame. Blame is the act of assigning responsibility. There is certainly a place for that, in particular in legal and regulatory proceedings, but this process is about cause, not blame, and admittedly, there are times when this process may assign blame to individuals, but this should be done exceedingly rarely and only after exhausting all other potential causes. Finding and mitigating causes is a path forward. Blame looks to the past. This has been an admittedly brief overview of the investigatory process with regards in particular to safety incidents. There are whole courses that teach this in much more detail than what I've gone over here from a lot of different perspectives. For instance, an insurance investigation has a whole different focus than an internal investigation. And really what this video is meant to do is give you a good idea from an organizational standpoint what you should be doing when you do encounter incidents. I hope you found this informative, and I'd really like to hear from you in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, life is risk. Manage it well.